All right, we're live. Welcome to my live stream. This is episode 265. Oh my goodness. I've almost done enough live streams where you could probably watch one every day of the year, which is kind of nuts. Yeah, let's see here. What is on the agenda for today? Well, first off, it's a Sunday afternoon, and so you're going to hear a lot of noise around the house, and that's just the nature of Sunday afternoons here. So, just so you know. And then aside from that, I should probably let you know who I am. So I'm Joshua Kemble. I've been an illustrator and graphic designer for about, 20 years now. And I've been an art director for about 8. Jim Lujan said, Kremble, I love you. I love you too, Jim. um, although, as I established on the last live stream, if I'm going to talk as Kremble, I have to talk in a demonic voice like, hello, welcome to Kremble's Kremlin Kremble Krems.
That sounds like a snack.
It does sound like a snack. my said it sounds like a snack. Kremble's Kremble Crunch. It's the most tasty crumbly breakfast in the world. Anyhow, yeah, Christopher Runciman said, okay, that voice is too scary. I agree. It is a creepy voice, Christopher. So I'm gonna work on some layout stuff. I might potentially be joined by some guests as the stream continues. And I'm thinking, unless if a guest like hops on, so it sounds like Gary Hodges might be hopping on in like about 10 or 15 minutes. I think till then, I've been digging the commentary on the I think the last one was an ethics conversation, but that made me go down like a rabbit hole of some other cosmic skeptic stuff. And so I was thinking about actually watching William Lee Craig or Lane Craig and Cosmic blah 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 blah. My pronunciation is not on point. This is how I am in the mornings. Um, So anyhow, I thought we'd watch William Lane Craig talk to Cosmic Skeptic about the historicity of Jesus, which I think is going to be interesting because if Cosmic Skeptic is a pretty hardcore atheist and William Lane Craig is an apologist as well as like I believe a philosopher, and he did a lot of studies and stuff on the history of like the life of Christ and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see. So maybe we'll watch a little bit of that before Gary hops on. I will say, full disclosure, I've seen William Lane Craig like get in debates before, and I've frankly not been like incredibly impressed. His performance in debates is kind of very rehearsed, very like bullet pointed. I don't know if it's hard to explain, but it's like it kind of feels like a slideshow. I don't know if you've ever seen somebody kind of do that. So it'll be interesting to see. But I do think William Lane Craig is very educated and intelligent. So I mean, like we'll just kind of see what happens with that and work on some art stuff. And in the meantime, Benji's working on. I believe he's playing a game called Battle Cats on his iPad, which is pretty epic. It's cats battling. And what are you guys working on? Christopher, what are you up to? Uh, Welcome, Christopher, to Kremlin's Kremble House. That's going to be my new thing. Anyhow, I should probably mention to people what I'm going to be working on. So, off screen, I'm going to be working on Not Death But Love, the strange supernatural story of Elizabeth Barrett Browning. And then we're potentially going to do just a little bit of commentary on some videos, just in lieu of conversation. And Christopher, if you want to hop on and just chat, that's cool too. But just to provide some content, I think I'll at this point just kind of listen to that video, and then if anybody else wants to join in, they can turn off the video and we can rock some business. Christopher Runciman said, "That made me cry. I am very sensitive." Sensitive to the Kremlin, you'll say? For anybody who's just tuning in, too, just to let you know a little bit of the story behind Kremble. I went to TCAF like last year, and it's Toronto Comics and Arts Festival, and I had to do a panel. I did a couple panels actually, but one of them was on neurodiversity in comics, and it was kind of talking about like writing about grief. I think that's why they picked me for it. Was like Jacob's Apartment deals with like death in a family and grief and stuff like that, and they had misspelled my name in all of the stuff, all of the promotional materials for TCAF. So like on their Twitter, they were like, "Yeah, you guys need to go check out Joshua Kemble." And in the pamphlet, it said, "Oh, hey, like make sure you catch Joshua Kemble at this panel discussion where he's going to talk about a lot of Kremble stuff." And so it's kind of become an inside joke since then that it's just such a great misspelling of my name that should be my alternate evil persona, is Kremble. And then I've gone even further and called the people who follow this live stream the Kremlin, which is like my secret society of Kremble followers. And then I just yesterday realized like Kremlin needs a voice. Like a Kremble is gonna sound a little more like this. So anyhow, that's where that is. Roll for Tarako said, "Hello, my gaming friends." Hello, sir. Christopher Runciman said, "I am weeping openly." And then let's see. Jim Luhan said, "I'm waiting for the debate between Witchy Poo and Master Sleestock." Nice. Okay, and then Roll for Tarako said, "So much grief, you're a regular Charlie Brown." Nice. That's true. I tend to like walk off screen. Like, have you guys seen on Arrested Development the whole bit with the Peanuts thing where it's like somebody will say something really sad and then like they'll lower their head and just walk, and then you'll notice that like it starts playing like the Charlie Brown music, and in the background of one of the scenes they actually have like a big red doghouse with a dog sleeping on top of it in the background. It's a good bit. Okay. Okay, let's get into the content, and then again, if we're joined by anybody, that can become the content. But till then, we're gonna watch this interesting debate. Aced Pro Allergy. That's basically what we're watching today, guys. We're gonna watch an allergy. I'm just kidding. We have to get through this commercial, and now we've got stuff. So okay, here we go. We've got a conversation. Is this the full one though? Because like, okay, good. I think this might be the full one. Okay. So this will be interesting. This is again Cosmic Skeptic. I should probably scoot over a little bit so that my head's not blocked entirely. And let's comment on it.
Be a cosmic skeptic is a dreadful thing to be, just a horrible position. This commonsensical slogan that extraordinary events require extraordinary evidence, I think is demonstrably false. I talked to people in the old Soviet Union before the fall of the Iron Curtain about how they managed to stay Christian despite the constant Marxist propaganda that was fed to them by their professors.
So this is a Cosmic Skeptic conversation with William
Welcome
Lane
to
Craig.
Within Reason. My name is Alex O'Connor, and Within Reason is a weekly podcast bringing you long-form conversations with interesting guests every single Sunday. Since Within Reason is still a relatively new podcast, it would be a great help to me if you could find us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and subscribe and give us a rating. Really helps to push the podcast even further. And if you like the podcast, it would mean the world to me if you would consider supporting it financially by going to support.withinreasonpodcast.com. This will take you to my Patreon page, which will allow you to contribute monetarily towards the upkeep of this podcast, and really is one of the biggest ways.
And by the way, if anybody hops on today, I have a topic in mind that's inspired by a friend of mine, Luke T. Harrington, who used to have a podcast called Change My Mind. And the whole podcast was about the last time somebody changed their mind about anything. And it was a really interesting conversation. And I feel like that would be a fun thing. So if anybody ends up hopping on, Frank Salazar is also more than welcome to join. Let me know. I can send you a link. Christopher, you're welcome. Jim, you're welcome if you want. That's what I would like to kind of discuss is like, hey, what's the last time you changed your mind about something significant? I just think it's an interesting question. Okay, let's continue.
To help this podcast and this YouTube channel to grow. Financial supporters of Within Reason will, wherever possible, receive early access to podcast episodes a few days before they go live to the rest of the world. I'm still very much trying to get this podcast off the ground. It's still very new to me. I still don't know if it's going to be successful. I don't know if I'll be able to keep it up. But I hope that I can because I'm enjoying it so much. And supporting me on Patreon is one of the best ways you can help me in that process. I'm still doing almost all of the work myself, editing the videos, for example, and the promo. And so if you like what I'm doing, then it would mean a lot to me if you would consider signing up. My guest today is Dr. William Lane Craig. Dr. Craig is a professor at Houston Baptist University and Biola University, and perhaps the world's most prominent Christian writer, apologist, and philosopher. Dr. Craig is famed for his prolific philosophical output, as well as his high-profile debates with famous atheists such as Christopher Hitchens and Sam Harris, which really brought him to prominence in the new atheist sphere.
Christopher Runciman said he has books behind him. Do you think he's read all of those books? From what I understand, yeah, I would definitely suspect that he's actually read those books. I don't know. I will say, if I did this stream from like my room, it would look kind of cool like that. The only problem is I like some of those leather bound books. I don't know, man. Some of those look classier. It was a little rich for my blood. Okay.
A fierce debater and someone that you should perhaps be a little bit scared to go up against.
You don't think that you would have said, "Oh, I was having a hallucination."
I spoke to Dr. Craig a number of years ago in a previous podcast episode and have regularly cited it as perhaps my favorite podcast episode ever produced. And so I was delighted to sit down again with Dr. Craig, this time to talk in particular about Christianity. One important thing to note is that this episode was recorded back on the 13th of October, 2022. So if you're wondering why it is that Dr. Craig brings up the death of Queen Elizabeth, it's because it was still quite recent at the time of the recording. In this episode, you can expect to hear us discuss the difference between the USA and the UK in its approach to the separation of church and state, why it is that upon dreaming that I was in a plane crash, I was motivated to start praying, and the historical case for the resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth. And this episode of Within Reason is brought to you by Morning Brew. Morning Brew is a free email newsletter bringing you the latest in tech, finance, and business news straight to your inbox.
And right now I'm working on some layout stuff for my book, and it's just it's a beast. Right now I'm trying to find a particular reference of the maid Wilson, because I have like 2 or 3 main pictures of the maid that show her costume and stuff like that, and it's good for me to have for when I get to the drawing stage. It's good for me to have that as a reference on the side so that I know, like the specifics of her costume as well as her face, because I kind of like established what I wanted her to look like, but now I'm digging through and trying to find that. So that's what's going on behind the scenes on my shelf, my beautiful shelf of books back here. where you've got Benji's skeleton that he made out of noodles. In fact, I almost feel like I should show that to you guys. It's pretty amazing. It's a noodle skeleton. It's kind of rad. I feel like that would be a really cool comic, is a noodle skeleton. Christopher, you can take that and run with it, sir. There's your 1-page comic suggestion. Noodle skeleton. Go with it where you may. Macaroni noodle skeleton would be even better. It almost sounds like a song. Like you could do like a poem about a macaroni noodle skeleton. It could be really, really brilliant. Christopher, I'm full of these genius ideas like macaroni noodle skeleton. That's what you get from Kemble. Okay, let's continue.
Every single day, Monday through Sunday. Many of us start our mornings aimlessly scrolling on social media, trying to get our news from somewhere.
Okay,
I've certainly been known to do that
usually
myself.
I'm
The
all
traditional
Dr. William Lane Craig, thank you so much for joining me again on the podcast.
Okay.
I'm delighted, Alex. Thanks for asking me.
It is a pleasure to have you back. I remember our last conversation, I think went quite well, was received quite well. But I also found after the fact, information was given to me that apparently, because my name on YouTube is Cosmic Skeptic, upon first hearing about my invitation, you were a little bit hesitant to come on my show because of the name Cosmic Skeptic. Is that true?
Yes, I think to be a cosmic skeptic is a dreadful thing to be, just a horrible position. And I understand you've since changed your moniker, isn't that right?
Well, it's a little bit complicated because the podcast has a new name and I'm hosting it as Alex O'Connor. But the Cosmic Skeptic name is a little bit too sentimental for me to give up entirely. It's still my Twitter handle and the main attraction of the channel. But it's...
By the way, you're also probably in the background hearing the soundtrack or the theme song for Magnum PI. That is my wife's ringtone.
An unfortunate byproduct of not seriously thinking through the name that I gave my channel when I first set it up, not realizing that one day I'd be inviting distinguished academics to consider sitting down with me. So I'm glad that you managed to see through that and sit down with me anyway, and to do it again.
Well, certainly. And before we begin, Alex, I just want to say how really deeply sorry we were to hear of the passing of Queen Elizabeth. Our condolences go out to all of you folks throughout Great Britain and the Commonwealth.
So in context, I think this is talking about the death of Queen Elizabeth, which is quite old now, but I think at the time was very fresh on people's minds. Let's see here. Trying to find again that maid costume. Okay, let's continue.
She was a marvelous woman and lived a life of incredible service and dedication to her people, and will be greatly missed.
I'm quite happy to hear you say that, especially given that I made a video, which you may or may not know that I made a video very recently, being quite critical of the monarchy and the reaction to the Queen's death. So did you not see that?
No, I wasn't.
That's mere coincidence.
I did not see it, but I'm something of an Anglophile, having studied in Britain and having roots in Britain, and so we were really grieved.
You know what? Let's pause here and show off the macaroni skeleton. I'll be right back with the macaroni skeleton. Hold on. It just has to be done. Okay, hang on.
Let's just get rid of this guy first. Because... You guys are just a little pushovers. I bet I could literally just make them push themselves off the island.
Just go like to the edge and then just sit there. Or somewhere you can see, not behind a tree.
I tried to jinx that. I tried to jinx that.
Okay, the wait is well worth it, okay? Check this out.
Jinx.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that is a full bore. Look at that beautiful macaroni noodle skeleton that Benji made. It's amazing. It's 3-dimensional. It's like I mean, if you're just hanging out and you're having an average day, and then bah, I'm a macaroni skeleton. Look out. Yeah. Anyhow, I'll go put this back up. To be fair, it's not just macaroni. There were like bits of straw as well, like a plastic straw, but you got to respect the macaroni skeleton. You know what I mean? I feel like that would be a great biker gang, is the macaroni skeletons. You know what I mean? Okay. Let us continue this deep, important conversation that is very mature. Definitely has nothing to do with macaroni skeletons. And but I hope that made your day, seeing the macaroni skeletons, seeing the joys of skeletons made of macaroni noodles. Let's continue.
To hear of her passing and watch the funeral, and were very moved and inspired by the service of the church, and well as the interment, and then also just of her very bold and frank Christian testimony.
Sweet. Okay, we got Gary Hodges, so we will put this conversation on hold, and we will have Gary joining us right now. Boom, Gary Hodges, how are you doing, sir?
Well, hello.
How do you do?
What was the conversation? What were you watching?
It's I've been like on a Cosmic Skeptic jam lately. He's got an interesting channel, and there's a conversation he had with William Lane Craig, who I usually dislike a lot. I don't know if you've seen that guy debate, but he usually looks a bit like a robot when he debates. And
which one? Cosmic Skeptic? Or?
No, William Lane Craig.
Okay. No, I'm unfamiliar with him.
Okay, he's a very educated guy, but his style of debate has just always like bothered the hell out of me, because he looks like a politician, kind of like, oh, hello there, and then like he's clicking through usually like a slideshow, so it feels like kind of gimmicky, and he has some okay points and stuff. And I know he's educated, and I know he's actually like done a lot of research and stuff, especially on history, and I guess like made some pretty big waves in psychology. But it's one of those things of like, I just have never been able to understand why people like William Lane Craig. And I heard this was a really good conversation from people. So I was like, maybe I'll give him a shot. Here is Scott Cirkland, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, look at that. We're getting the band back together.
Yeah. You guys, we're really close to having a New Direction reunion here. And it's on my channel, so we can talk about this.
We are. Gosh, what if we can actually get together the reunion in this stream? Is that even possible? Where are the other two?
Yeah, that's true. I feel like we're 2 members shy of a full out reunion, you guys.
Yeah.
But really, do we really need
a full New Direction?
Yeah, I mean, have we thought about like maybe an entirely new direction?
Wow, an entirely, not a partially New Direction.
That's true. It would be a partial New Direction for sure.
Right.
Yeah, I think that would be the thing.
Right.
How are you guys doing, man? What are you working on?
Me
Scott, first.
I guess Gary first, and then Scott.
Oh, okay.
Gary was here first.
Yeah.
I was. I'm getting my. It's hard to tell because it looks probably the same from here, but I'm trying to get my office tidied up because I think Scott Lost will be putting his air mattress in here when he stays for Phoenix Fan Fusion.
Nice.
So getting all the shit off the floor and straightening up and dusting and all that kind of thing. I think I'm where I need to be. And I asked him just now, because I was assuming, maybe foolishly, maybe partially hoping it was like a full mattress. Yeah. So I just messaged him. I was like, hey, how big is this air mattress you're bringing? He's like, oh, it's a queen. It's like, oh. So I like pulled out the tape measure and I'm looking on the floor. I now this is something I know from work because I've had to do 3D models of queen size beds, 60
Nice.
inches. So like I measured it out. It will fill this room more or less. Like you'll be able to open the door and that'll be about it. But it's like, hey, that works. You'll be able to be in a room with a closing door. Like that's not bad. So
I love it. I love it. That's awesome. And that's kind of rad. Like that's got to be fun after the just chaos of like finishing up your book. To have like a point of time where you can be like, I'm going to think about cleaning my house. You know?
oh, that's all the next few days will be. I think
Nice.
tomorrow is probably, this is low importance, but tomorrow we'll probably be mowing the lawn and cleaning up the back patio in case we want to record. I want the option of recording a podcast on the back patio.
Nice.
Which might be different. I don't know. We'll probably end up doing it on the dining table, but just for that option. And then Tuesday will be the bathroom. That's the proverbial. Those guys always talk about, like from Pee-wee's, I don't remember which Pee-wee movie it was. There was a pet shop on fire, and Pee-wee's saving all the animals. And every time he goes in there, he sees like this thing of snakes, and he like kind of looks at it for a second, and then goes and saves something else. Like, and finally he goes in, and all that's left are the snakes. So you see him like running out, like with like all these snakes in his hands. For me, and so for the Making Comics guys, the snakes are always the thing you don't want to do. So you laugh. Cleaning the bathroom is the snakes for sure. You know,
nice.
I hate cleaning bathrooms. So
I've heard
that'll probably be Tuesday.
I've heard them reference that, but I didn't make the connection to Pee-wee's Big Adventure on that.
Yeah,
so that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, like Scott Lost, he famously hates backgrounds. So backgrounds are always the snakes for him.
So the snakes are kind of like their adaptation of Benjamin Franklin's frogs.
What is that? I don't know that. I'm unfamiliar.
I believe it's Franklin who had this statement, like, if you have a day where you're tasked to eat a frog and you know you have to eat that frog, is that it's better to start in the morning and just eat the frog, and that way everything after that's a pleasant surprise, and like nothing's gonna be that bad. Like,
that's funny though. I wholeheartedly disagree, because the last thing I want is the rest of my day tainted by burping up frog.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah. So
I think I'll save that to the end.
Yeah.
And then chase it with a giant hit of whiskey and go to bed. Because that's it. That's all I'm doing.
So you put the pro in procrastination there, basically.
I do. So yeah, that's today's thing, is tidy up.
What about you, Scott?
I am working on some digital assets that will be downloads for when I start doing my new videos. There's going to be certain projects I'm working on, and a lot of those, there'll be templates for those projects that'll be like on my newsletter and things. So I'm working on getting all that stuff ready, because I'm anxious to kind of launch this channel, but there's still all these odds and ends and things that I need to do. So that's kind of what I'm working on.
I'm really excited about the launch that you're going to do.
So am I.
It's going to be epic.
I know there's no spoilers. See, I have no way to even ask the question I want to ask without potentially. I'll leave it at I'm very excited. I'm very excited.
Okay. Because I'm just trying to think what would actually be a spoiler, but I mean,
hypothetically,
I talked about
it'd be okay to say we got a sneak preview.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, then there we go. We got a sneak preview. I'm very excited. You guys are in for a preview, and it's gonna be great.
Yeah, we can attest to the fact that it's gonna be pretty exciting and a huge level up, which is saying a lot for Scott, because he always makes good content. So
it's it's super legit, and like you say, Josh, they were before as well, but it feels like Scott got picked up by some cable channel, and they're like, all right, well, we're going to give you a show. What are you going to do? Like, it feels like
I wish somebody would throw me, because this is all out of pocket right now, and it doesn't generate any money. So it's kind of, but sometimes that's what you got to do. So I think it has the potential to be something where I can actually turn this channel, profit. not necessarily from YouTube, although, but with all the other stuff that goes with it. I mean, I've kind of got a multi-tiered plan as far as growing the newsletter and Patreon, and at some point maybe getting sponsors and things like that. So
I love it. I also think, honestly, I think you're going to clean up on the live streams. Like, I feel like
I hope so.
I get occasional super chats, and I'm a tiny channel, so it's like
Yeah.
I'd imagine with your subscriber base, especially if you can gamify it a little bit. And seeing your content, I think there will be ways to gamify it a little bit to where there's
I've been
incentives for
watching.
super chats.
I may have mentioned this before, but do you guys know who Pat Flynn is?
No.
So he's kind of an entrepreneur. He has a podcast called, what's it called? I forgot what it is, but it's like a business, like passive income building podcast. And he's very big, but recently he launched this, like in the past couple years, I think he launched this Pokemon channel. And going into it, he said he didn't really know much about Pokemon. His kids liked it and everything. He kind of learned as he went, and he designed, and his channel's called Big Pocket Monster. And basically
that's also a New Direction song.
yes. Big Pocket Pool is the other one. That's the New Direction song. But so anyway, but he does all these Pokemon videos, but he puts a spin on them. He makes them really entertaining and things. And he's got one where he takes like Pokemon cards and he like figures out how to throw them so they, hit targets, just weird stuff, but it's all centered around Pokemon. And then he'll go to shows, but he does a live stream where he just opens tons of Pokemon cards and gives them out, and stuff. So stuff like that. I mean, I kind of been watching how he does his live streams, and it's really cool. So, but I think because of what I'm doing is it's all centered around projects, and it's the ideas to get people involved and want them to do that. I'm hoping I can build a big audience with the live streams and stuff. So.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and that can bring some interactivity to it. But again, like that also could bring a little bit of revenue, that I feel like with the size of your audience is like a pretty good source of revenue that you
we'll see. And
that you haven't.
I'm not exactly sure. The thing I don't know is exactly when I should go live. Like I'm thinking it still will probably be during the day, so that might exclude some people, but I'll just have to play around with that,
Yeah. I mean, generally, like I get way better, traction on live streams, like on the weekends when I'm able to do it, like in the afternoon or in the morning. But it's like, those late night streams, you get like minimal, engagement. But that's just the time I have to work. But if you have ideal time slots, probably Tuesdays, I would say. You probably want to do Tuesdays for sure.
Well, that's typically when I used to launch my videos, and probably what I will do moving forward. But it might be when people are, the live streams might be when people are at work.
Okay.
So we'll just have to see, what happens. So
yeah. But I love the idea. I'm curious what'll happen with super chats on your live streams. Definitely mention them when you're doing your live streams too. It's surprising. It's surprising who will kick in a little bit.
If I can do something for people that do super chats and things like, I don't know, we'll figure that out as we go.
I love it. Okay, so I have a weird question for you guys. If you want to try answering a weird question. Sure. When was the last time you significantly changed your? I guess we'll start with Gary. When was the last time you significantly changed your mind on something? Something you were completely convinced of, and then something arose or whatever, and you were like, I got to change my mind about that.
God, that's a hard question.
I know. Yeah. Well, you can think about it for a little bit.
Yeah, I'm gonna think about it for
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there's things I've changed my mind over time, but I don't know if anything like somebody said something like, I mean, there's always somebody will say something like, oh, that's a good point.
It doesn't have to be.
I haven't thought of that.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be an instantaneous thing. It's just anything significant you changed your mind on, where you're like,
how are we defining significant? What is
your own definition?
Okay.
Like significant for you.
Totally subjective.
So
you know what? I like chocolate after all. No.
Honestly, it could be that. It could be.
Okay, no, I'll try to do better than that. I'm just trying to.
Yeah, it could be.
I can't think of anything specifically, but I know that
like, for instance, if you were Thomas Adams listening to the stream yesterday, you could significantly maybe this morning have changed your mind and realized that mint chip ice cream is easily the best ice cream and come to the correct conclusion.
That
would be a good example.
We're saying that's the best? Wow.
I like
this is
chip.
just
I don't know if it's the
dropping
best.
the hot takes in your stream. Just really trying to wow.
Look, it's not a hot take. That's just objective reality.
Okay,
so,
well,
I mean,
we're gonna have to agree to disagree, I think.
I disagree,
best.
sir. We got to start the disagreement arc again.
Right, I know. I'm
Yeah,
going to
but
think about this. I will get you an
yeah.
answer. I had a question for you too, but I'm going to wait till I answer mine.
Okay. Well, you can throw that one out there so we can get the questions.
Here's one.
Things
I
boiling.
wanted to. I know in probably all of our individual ways we're neurotic artists, but I want to see if this the way it manifests with me is unique to me or anyone else has had this experience.
Nice.
It seems like ever since I finished 75. So once I started doing this whole like long-term involved creative projects where for months or months, and now like if you just count them all for years, just constantly working on these really ambitious things where you're doing everything. You're doing the world design, you're doing scripts, you're making all these little micro decisions and macro decisions, blah, blah, blah. Ever since I've started doing that, once in a while, it's not all the time. Once in a while, I think when I'm especially feeling the weight of it, if I'll see some piece of art, maybe it'll be like concept art, maybe it'll be an ambitious like scene from a movie where you can tell there was a lot of special effects. Maybe you're looking at like an intricately designed costume in a movie. Anything where you can tell there was a lot of work that went into it.
Yeah.
I get sort of in the pit of my stomach, like a cold chill. Just think like it kind of makes me think like, oh God, that looks like a nightmare amount of work. And it kind of, it doesn't diminish it. Like I'm appreciating it, but it makes me just, I'm sympathetically feeling anxious about the level of effort it took to do that. Now, has anyone else ever experienced anything like that? Or is that, again, my unique, weird anxiety response to seeing ambitious work?
You want to go, Scott?
Sorry, I don't know.
He's in the zone.
That's okay. We're all working on projects.
I knew when I got on the stream, I was going to mention that at the beginning that I'm going to try to be focused, but I might get bogged down in the stuff that I'm doing. So
no worries.
You answer the question, and Josh, and I will listen and restate the question briefly.
I'll restate the question a little bit in my answer just to make sure I heard it right. So you're basically saying that like when you're in the thick of it on projects and stuff like that, you can often find yourself like, if you're, say, watching a movie or reading the newspaper or reading a magazine and you see a piece of artwork that has an immense amount of effort behind it and it looks incredible, but you're like kind of looking at it and you feel a little freaked out by it because you're like empathetic to the level of work that poor artist had to put into it.
Yeah, basically. Is that
kind of correct? Yeah, yes. I totally get that.
Okay.
I have that quite often. A good example of that is like, I think Habibi came out. I can't remember. I think it was after I had finished my first graphic novel, and the level of work on those pages just made me sick, and not sick out of jealousy. It was like, I was just imagining this poor person slaving away on these pages. Yeah. And it was kind of sad, you know, although it's a beautiful book. Like I don't think it's his best written book, but it's easily his best illustrated book.
Yeah. You appreciate what it takes to get there.
Oh yeah.
And then, and as a result, I think that, the visceral response is like, oh God, you know, like it's admiring. It really is. It's like you said, it's not a jealousy thing. It's not a.
It's more like a PTSD thing.
A little bit. A little bit. Yes.
Oh no.
It kind of triggers like, and I don't mean this literally. I mean it figuratively. Little bit of a panic attack. Yeah. You know, you look at this thing and it's like, God, that looks like a bad dream. You know, if I had to start from nothing and get to what I'm looking at right now, that sounds terrible.
Yeah, and there is like some pretty stunning work, especially stuff with like crazy texture and patterns where you're just like you look at it and you can easily tell the person spent like, you know, like 2 or 3 days just like doing a texture. And it's like, how did you do that?
Right.
Yeah. I get that a lot with like Albrecht Dürer stuff too, where I just like imagine like doing that in wood. Like that makes me really little anxious. Yeah. What about you, Scott? Do you ever have that?
There's tons of things. There's well, whenever I like, because I do a lot of vector stuff, but then you watch somebody like DKNG has these videos where they show their process and they show how deep they can go as what they can do with vector drawing and stuff. And I look at that, and I'm like, wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, DKNG is a good example of that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they go so deep into all that and all these like things that I didn't even know you could do in Illustrator and stuff like that. Other things like I don't have this book. Gary, I think, has this book, but just something that took a long time to create, like the Barry Windsor Smith monster. I've seen you show that. I've seen a number of people show that off, and I don't know how long he worked on that. He's been working on the thing for so long.
It's like 30 years or something.
30 years. It's like, so I mean, things like that, because I like to take on relatively small and quick projects. That I don't like long-term things like stuff Josh does. That would freak me out. Like for me, it has to be something I can do and then move on to something else. So anything like that is kind of like, oh yeah.
But it's bizarre, Scott, because you also like you say this frequently, but you also like how many pages, if you were to tabulate like all of the Young and Dead issues, have you done of the Young and the Dead?
Well, my math's not the best, but I've done 5, and each one has been 22 pages. So, and then I'm doing another one that'll be like around 30 pages. Yeah, the next one will be 30 pages. Then I've got it close.
So yeah,
but I take breaks. I'll take a break and then I'll move on, and then I might come back to it. But then also that's the reason why those are single issues and not a graphic novel.
Right.
So
we can, especially now that you guys have read the 3 I've done, you can see how ridiculous this was. I remember when I set out to do D versus M, the original thought was that it would come out like all 6 parts together in a giant book. Like that I was going to do that. I was going to just do and each individual story you're reading now would be just a part of that book. And now, like given 6 years in, that would be Barry Windsor Smith level, like lunacy. What are you doing? This is much more, but that's also like having never done a comic before, you're saying like, well, maybe I'll just do them all and put them together, and like not recognizing like, no, this is going to take you years.
Yeah. And honestly, you're going to get a lot of fuel from the like getting some response while you're building it. Because I think otherwise it's like, it's very easy to feel like you're kind of making this thing in a vacuum.
Yes.
And that can be a little maddening. More credit to people who can do that. It's just, that's a lot to do.
Well, they'll be like, and I'm blanking on the guys. I think it's Harvey Darger or Darger. I was talking. Christopher Runciman was talking about this documentary on his stream. I own it, actually. It was this guy. I don't remember what the accepted vocabulary is now. He was mentally impaired, like he was just a little borderline. He was a janitor or something.
Oh, I know about this guy. Is this the apartment guy?
Yes, he would go home and he was working on this epic kind of graphic novel story, like this ridiculous hundreds and hundreds of pages.
Yeah,
where there'd be like murals and paintings and prose, and like it was this crazy, ambitious, weird project that nobody knew he was working on. Like nobody. And then I think he finally died, and they were cleaning out his apartment, and they found this enormous thing he'd been spending years and years and years working on.
And it's like insane because it's like it's like almost like an alternate reality that he had built for himself. Like it's really, but it's kind of stunning, like just the amount of work and stuff, and it's got like collage in it, and
it's interesting work. It's very weird, but it's not like weird scribblings in a spiral notebook. Like it's like a fully, like he's really, you could tell this was his life. He went and mopped at work and came home and worked on this crazy thing for ever. And there's a whole documentary about it. Really fascinating. But also I find kind of like a weird cautionary tale. Like to me, maybe this is the wrong reaction to it. It kind of like we all draw the line in a different place. To me, that's an example of sort of an unhealthy, strange, like I don't know. I think more about what you're saying, where it's like there's a benefit maybe in dripping it out. It becomes less a weird, insular, hermetic endeavor. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I think I have some answers to your question.
Okay. Last time you changed your mind on something big.
Significantly changed my mind about something.
Yeah, like just a significant turnaround on something you prior thought and were really convinced of, and then somehow changed your mind.
I think I could rattle off 3 very briefly off the top of my head. I think I used to be one of those hardcore vote third party down the line every election.
Okay.
And I think that was probably the earliest one I grew out of. I think it was sometime in my 20s. I think it was Bush v. Gore, and I had voted for Nader.
Yeah.
And not that it would have made a difference. I don't live in Florida. Like, it doesn't really matter. But like, I think that made me think. I hope this doesn't invite debate because I'm not interested in it. But like from whoever's watching. But it made me think more critically about, in our system, voting for a third-party candidate.
Yeah.
Like whether that makes any sense. Now, I'm not saying the two-party system is great. I'm not saying that, like, oh, you got to pick a side. Like, I would love to see ranked choice voting across the country. I would love to see the abolition of the Electoral College. But I think with the system we have now, like, to me, like, I kind of roll my eyes when it's like someone's like, oh, I'm going to vote for Gary Johnson or somebody, where it's, I just can't. So I moved away from that. Another one was...
just to drill down on that a little bit.
Sure.
Like what changed? What was the kind of final straw that changed your mind on it? And then, I guess, how did it impact you? Has it bettered your life having changed your mind on that?
I think people who are supporters of third-party candidates, I think this would incense them a little bit, but I think it made me more pragmatic. Like, I think I'm more practical now about.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Like I think what I can't say it was any one thing. I think it's you have a series of experiences and you learn a bunch of different things, and then you one day you wake up and you realize, like, I feel differently about this. But I think it was recognizing that someone could lose the popular vote, but it wouldn't matter if they won via the Electoral College.
Yeah.
And therefore, what the hell am I doing with my third-party voting? Like, what is, like, and I personally don't believe in protest votes.
Yeah.
Like, I would just as soon stay home. Like, if I really felt that strongly, like, no, neither one of these people, I don't, but I think it was just reading more and thinking more about the Electoral College, I guess, and the reality of it. Again, I would love to abolish it, but this is the dance I was invited to, and it was something in there. This, now keep in mind, this has been like a long time now, so it's hard to remember exactly how I got there. Another one was I was raised Catholic, like a lot of sort of disillusioned Catholics. I kind of, in my teens, swung way back in the other direction. Yeah. Where I don't know if I ever would have described myself as an atheist, but I was just very like, this is all a bunch of fairy tales and nonsense, and I can't be bothered. Like this, for sure. That kind of like really falling back in the other direction. I think what moderated that, and that was the last time I really changed my mind about it. But to skip back briefly, I think I had very much a strong attitude that I'm only interested in literal historical truth, and everything else is sort of playing pretend to me. I don't really care about it, you know. And
Reasonable.
I think it took me time to get there, but it was through I minored in comparative religion. I was very interested in studying like all these different religions, and it was sort of a way back to my birth faith, not to become a believer again, but to appreciate it on a different level. And I think I gradually started to recognize the value of, however you would want to describe it, metaphorical truth, non-literal truth, non-historical truth, that there is, you know, that something cannot be historically true, but actually still be almost more true. Like that can be sort of a capital T truth, that it has more value. It has merit beyond simply, did this actually happen? Is this something that's documentable? Is this something that I actually believe is a literal thing that, you know, is a part of the universe, or that occurred, or whatever? So I think, I think that was like the pendulum was here, and then it was here, and then it kind of settled in this more open-minded, agnostic, and not hung up on, but did that really happen kind of attitude, where it's like, I think now I have sort of a sense that like, that's not the most important question. If you're talking about something like,
no, that
I
makes
think,
sense.
you know, I might have grown up thinking like Noah's Ark, that's quite a story. And then I would have gone into a period of like, what a bunch of hooey. And now I can actually recognize like, no, it didn't, in my opinion, of course, didn't happen, but there's value in the story. And maybe the value of the story is more important than whether it happened or not. So like that kind of, you know, I think would be a shift.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's cool.
Finally, I would say I've lived most of my life being totally okay with, and maybe even supportive of, the death penalty, and I am not anymore.
You know, that's an interesting one. We share that one on changing our minds on that, I guess, because that's something I used to be very adamant about supporting.
Yeah, I'm shifted. I don't know if I'm totally shifted, but I'm definitely moving away from a lot of the way, you know, people are punished in general. You know, I mean, in certain cases, but it's just, I don't know. It's like, I think more of a prevention, or there's certain things you can do that's a little more constructive, that, you know, and probably cost less, as, you know, for taxpayers and things like that, or whatever.
That was one of the things that started changing my mind, was just the cost in general. Like, because it seemed like, oh, well, why would somebody pay for, you know, this prisoner to be alive or whatever, when they've been like this horrible murderer or something like that? And then you
hear that, I think some like, oh, free room and board for the rest of your life must be nice, cable TV. And it's like, I think actually, and that's only gotten more and more extreme, because, you know, since I've had my current job, I've worked more than my share of prison murders. So I've gotten a pretty well acquainted with what prisons look like.
Yeah, it's not a vacation.
This is not, no sane person would ever want to be there. Like, actually, in fact, even though I 100% believe that the state should have the authority to lock certain people up for the rest of their natural lives, I also think prisons need to be a lot more humane. And a lot cleaner, and a lot safer, and a lot better. And it disappoints me that no politician is ever going to win an election saying like, we need to pour more money into prisons. You know, like, and not just
have we thought about, you know, being more humane to prisoners, you know, like,
right. And it's a shame. It really, I hate to say this, it's kind of a sweeping generalization, but I think we have a little bit of a vindictive mean streak in our society when it comes to people who have been convicted of crimes, and it's a shame. I think I think a lot of times we're not as kind or as forgiving, or even like liberal and progressive friends of mine. I consider myself liberal or progressive, not as liberal or as progressive as you think.
Yeah.
You know, like when you really start kind of teasing, like kind of teasing apart, like, what do you think about this? What do you think we should do with these people? What do you think? Like, you realize there is this kind of medieval attitude when it comes to some hot button issues. And I personally, maybe I'm naive, I think they can coexist. I think you can be very hardline about the worst criminals among us.
Yeah. And
also treat them humanely.
Yeah.
Not like it shouldn't be. I think a life sentence shouldn't be a sentence to torture and disease and abuse and sexual violence and that. Like that's not what this should be. And I think some people don't realize that prisons in America. If I showed you some of the pictures that I've seen and told you that, look at this prison in Mexico, look at this prison in Thailand, look at this prison in Malaysia, you'd be like, yeah, look at that. Ugh, disgusting. It's like, oh, surprise. This is Lewis prison in Arizona. And like I think, and somehow you would see, I think with some people who are really dug in, a weird shift in their head. It's like, well, maybe they should have kept their nose clean and flew right and not gotten themselves into trouble. Again, there's this weird vindictive thing that
like the empathy goes away because the person's a criminal or whatever. And it's like, but you got to wonder, like, what is the purpose of the prison in general? It's an interesting thought exercise. But it is funny that you mentioned that, because that's one of the ones I've changed my mind on too. And a lot of it just had to do with reading more about it. Again, I don't think we can have a society without prisons or consequence for crime. In general, like, you need to disincentivize people, but from like doing bad things, but still at the same time,
and keep us safe from the people who can't be disincentivized.
100%. Yeah, like the outlier who like literally just wants to take the norms, the societal norms, and just throw them out the window. Like there needs to be a place for those people, but at the same time, that place doesn't have to be a living hell. Like it just it's kind of insane that we've conducted it that way. That's an interesting point. Well, we're at the hour mark. Do you mind if I real quickly play like a trailer?
Go for it.
Okay, awesome. I'm gonna put on a trailer for Jacob's apartment. I still need to load your trailer, Gary, and Paul's trailer, which I did download today. So
if you want, you can wait on mine, because again, it will demonetize. You won't get sued, like your video won't get taken down, but it's a copyrighted song and it's for use. Like I'm using it the way they intend, but it will demonetize.
But it does demonetize. Okay.
Yes.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Well, then maybe
you'll get the copyright thing in the description with the song title in it. That kind of thing.
Okay. Well, let's put on the trailer for Jacob's apartment, and then when we come back, we're gonna bug Scott to tell us what he changed his mind about.
I don't know if I have an answer. I mean,
welcome to Kremble's House of Questions. Okay, I'll be right back. Speak clearly, it seems that only in dreams can we these things we've seen and walk around breathing I don't know the part to play in this heart of mine. There's dissonant things, they split at the seams. Okay. Scott, you got anything?
Yeah.
Frank brought up, did Scott change his mind on fan art?
Oh,
fan art. No, I mean, I don't know. I've got it. To me, it's that's a weird one. I mean, it's I don't like the fact that people that people can take something that they don't own and basically piggyback off of millions of dollars of advertising and promotion that somebody else spent and make a ton of money off it. It seems, but I'll look at some fan art and like, oh, that's really cool. So I mean, I think it's not necessarily the fan art. It's more how. How is it fair that you're allowed to kind of do this? I don't know.
It's also
and a lot of it is kind of me.
Yeah.
Is whether you want to call it not necessarily jealousy, but like I'm trying to build something myself, and it's hard. And I could easily take this other route, and it would just be it would be a lot easier. But it's just I don't know. It's just to me, there's a moral.
It's the equivalent of like when I was in bands, which by the way, I at like about 2:50 I'll be heading out so that I can go do some music, although I'll be streaming later again, today too. But anyhow, so I used to play in bands a lot, and one of the most frustrating things when you're in a band is if you're booking a gig with a cover band, because like the cover band's going to get the audience immediately because they're playing songs that like have already, again, like Scott was saying, they're playing songs that are already tested and were already written by somebody who took a chance and have like a record company behind them promoting it. So if you're just covering a song, it's like an easy way to win the audience. It's a really easy way to win the audience.
I have
you just play Freebird. Like that's the joke among musicians.
Is that actually your experience though? Because I, as someone who's not in a band, but when I've been in an audience and I see a cover band, at best it's this thing of like, this just makes me wish I was listening to the real thing.
Oh, for sure.
Like that. So it's sort of crowd pleasing, but it's not. It's also to me kind of a disappointment. But I think I'm more in. Well, I think both of ours, but what Scott was just expressing, where it's like I would rather see your thing.
Agreed.
Like I don't want to see your take on somebody else's thing. I want to see your thing.
Yeah, 100% agree with you on that. I think that it's just an easier way to win the crowd.
Yeah.
And so in the short term, it's financially way more profitable for a band to just do covers. Like you can get a lot more gigs. You can play weddings, you can do all this like stuff. But at the end of the day, you're playing weddings and like cheap bars, and like you could possibly make a good living doing that, but it's not going to be the same reward as if you like wrote an album that blew up. It's just not the same. And what you're doing is exploiting that, those who wrote those songs and albums for your own gain. And again, like I'm not going to judge a musician who's making a living being a musician. There's some incredible musicians in cover bands, right? Some of them are really fun. A friend of mine, Jenny Cotterill, I went to grad school with her, and she had a Cockspur. I don't know if you've heard of that band. It's like a weird punk rock band, like in the oi genre. And it was an all-girl cover band of Cockspur called Cuntspur, which is hilarious. And they ended up like turning some heads. And now she's like in a band called Bad Cop that's signed on Fat Records, and they're writing their own stuff. So it's like they started with this kind of gimmick of like, we're covering this band we really love. We're doing like acoustic versions, and it's all girls playing, in a band that's named like anyhow. So it started as kind of a gimmick. And again, it's not a bad gimmick. It was fun. They were incredible live. So I really want to be clear. I'm not like judging. I feel the same way about cover bands as I do about fan art. Like to me, that's kind of, I put them in the same category where it's like most musicians who know their stuff could probably cover pretty much any song with enough rehearsal, right? Most artists could do pretty decent fan art, if they know their stuff. But can most artists generate their own thing? I think that's a little little tougher, right? Like, how do you generate your own thing, your own print that's going to sell on its own merits, rather than, oh, look, it's Spider-Man. I love Spider-Man.
Right. Well, and I think, you know, this is sort of maybe an exception to my fan art feelings. If I really love an artist and I think they have a very unique kind of style, there's something about them that's distinctive and individual.
Yeah.
In some cases, I am kind of excited to see, well, what would their take on this known character? Like, I would love, you know, and I'm sure he's probably done it, but like, would I want to see Mike Mignola do Superman? Sure. Just out of the curiosity of it, you know, just to see what that looks like.
It doesn't have to be fan art. It can be, that could be like an actual license agreement.
It could be, but even if it's like a one-off and there's
and if it's like, and I don't care about.
Okay.
I don't care. I mean, I've done plenty of fan art. I just don't sell it. You know.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Other than maybe if it's an original,
selling.
I might sell it, but I'm not.
Yeah, that's for sure. Like for the selling does. I have the same feeling where I don't know how I feel about it.
I feel like if you're gonna do it, I think the way Chris Caligula goes about it, where he actually gets licenses and does like, you know, he'll do Star Wars art, but it's like licensed Star Wars art. I feel like that's the way to do it. If you're gonna do it, you know.
That's cool. Yeah, I didn't know he did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to me also, it's a little bit of like, and I mean, this doesn't happen much, but every once in a while somebody will be like, well, I'm selling, you know, like there's all the stuff they're selling, it's all fan art, and they're thinking that, you know, there's so much, more, I guess, more successful at marketing their work when they're not doing half the marketing. And if they like compare it to, you know, to somebody like me who maybe like you compare two Etsy stores and one's got all these sales, where there's a reason you have all those sales. It's because people are Googling Batman and they find your stuff.
Yeah.
No one's Googling, I'm trying to think of a print that I did, like the Mech Daddy, which is like the pimp mech and all this stuff. Like people aren't necessarily Googling something like that.
Right. Who's gonna Google that?
Yeah, no one's going to.
I want to see Jim Lujan do a cartoon with the Mech Daddy.
Mech Daddy.
I could just hear the soundtrack in my head that Jim would come up with for that.
I still have to pitch him on a loafing about jingle.
Nice.
But yeah, so I mean, in addition to what you were saying earlier, as far as things I've changed my mind on, I think a big thing for me, and this came about when I was doing the leadership trainings and everything.
Yeah.
I used to really hold grudges, like, and it got to the point where I realized that's not serving me at all. It's doing is it's making my life worse. And so it was kind of, I got to the point where, and whatever that is, whether it's like with my ex-wife or anything like that, kind of letting that stuff go and just that freeing everything up for me. So holding grudges and just watching people, they just get in their shit over all this stuff. And it's like, I was watching that Cartnarks thing and that thing that you recommended. And I'm like, these people are such victims. It's like, well, no one puts the cart away for me. It's like,
it's fascinating. It's like a case history. It's like a study in, like even in Cartnarks, like you'll see people who look like they'd be like the sweetest person on earth just turn into a complete monster over the stupidest thing.
Yeah.
It's just like, life's too short for that kind of stuff. You know?
That's a good answer, Scott. Scott thought outside the box with it. Now I'm thinking about like therapy breakthroughs. There's like ways I've changed my mind. Like I do one I bring up a lot when I'm talking about therapy topics with people. I remember I'd only been going like 6 months or a year or something, and somehow it came up that I had not yet told my dad that I was going to therapy, and my therapist, like, he immediately, he's like, so why is that? And I was like, well, I wouldn't want him to somehow feel bad, to wonder if, like, this is somehow like, if I'd, like, been a better parent, or is this, like, I wouldn't want him to kind of spiral and, like, how is this maybe, like, a parent, like, reacting to the sound that their son is in therapy, like, like, is this somehow my fault? I guess was the gist of it.
That's not where I thought you were going to go with that, because, like, and I hope Ben doesn't mind me sharing a little bit, but I was thinking because your dad was in law enforcement, and sometimes there's also sort of a generational thing in their approach to, I
you don't do
all
that.
this
You
stuff
don't
out
talk.
myself.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
just
Tough
and like
enough.
so without getting again. So Jen's ex-husband was older and was a firefighter and has major trauma from all the stuff that he witnessed and never dealt with it, and that was major part of why that relationship didn't continue, and major part why she's going into being a therapist now. So I mean, but there's like a generational thing, and there's just no, you just got to deal with that. But
there's that stigma
people think they're
around
dealing
men.
with it, but they're not dealing with it.
They're not.
They're projecting that onto other people and just ruining other people's lives. And
well, no, that probably was not probably. I remember that was maybe like a distant second. I think my first was like, I don't want him to feel bad.
Yeah.
But then the second would be, I mean, like my dad, he was a Vietnam vet, he was a homicide detective. Like, you don't for sure, I'd be thinking like he'd be like, what are you doing that for? I don't know. There's a possibility. I didn't know. But mostly it was the first. It's like, I don't want him to think about this in the wrong way. And the therapist immediately, he was like, your dad's a grown man. And you're not responsible for other people choosing or not choosing to be an adult about, information they receive. Like that's not your problem. Your problem is for you to be an adult, and let everyone else be responsible for their own adulthood. Like if he's gonna spiral like that, then that's his shit to carry.
Yeah.
So, and he's like, so your homework for next time is to come in here and tell me that you told your dad you're going to therapy. So, because this is part of your bullshit. You have this weird kind of codependent thing where you want to take care of everybody and keep everybody happy and keep everybody level. And like, I'm not, I don't want to burden them with my problems. And so I was like, all right. So I went over there very reluctantly. I'd already been meaning to go and, pop in and visit with him for a little bit. And I found a way to bring it up. And I have to say, first of all, he completely surprised me. He seemed very proud of me. He's like, that sounds great. That sounds great. And boy, that's something I've really thought maybe I should have done, just it was very, and we proceeded to have, and I was just telling Mary about this the other day. I think the first real emotional, again, real, capital R, adult to adult conversation with my dad in my life. And I always felt like I had a good relationship with my dad. But for the first time, we were talking about shit that mattered. Yeah. And as two grown men. Yeah. And it was but I think that was a big turning point for me, was realizing all my reasons for not, now it could have gone a bunch of different ways. It could have been not as satisfying, but it showed me that sometimes your internal, especially if you're not perfectly emotionally healthy. Yeah. Good for you if you are. I know I'm not. It shows you that sometimes you're in the way of a better life.
Yeah. I'd say probably more than sometimes,
Yeah, maybe often. And so it was a big learning experience. And I think
that's awesome.
Like I said, it changed my relationship with my dad, but also I think it changed me. It made me realize okay, some of my own bullshit gets in the way of where I want to be.
Yeah. So. I relate to that a lot, because I definitely grew up kind of in a culture of looking down on antidepressants, looking down on therapy, just kind of looking at things and really sincerely being convinced of this, that if you put your mind to it, you can overcome anything, Right. And which is a pretty good thing to kind of believe for most of the time, because it's not bad to have agency, but yeah, as I've gotten older, I've definitely changed my opinion on that.
I think it's also not untrue in most cases. Yeah. I think the point of therapy, though, and this is something that I think the therapist isn't going to, all the therapist is going to do is help you get there. You're still doing all the work, but I think what you learn quickly in therapy, at least in my experience, is these well-worn little tracks your brain is in. Yep. Where it's you don't recognize how you are kind of like the little Hot Wheels sets where you piece the tracks together. Yeah. And your thought patterns, it's the same every time. And you sometimes need an outside person to kind of check you
Yes.
And it's like, well, why do you think that? And why
No,
do you
totally.
feel this way? And like, and kind of make you realize like there's a lot in your just normal day-to-day thinking and feeling that's kind of autopilot that you take for granted.
Yeah.
And you need someone to step you outside of that. That's why I always have a very dim view when you're talking to someone. You'll hear this. Usually from that generation you're talking about of like people who's like, I don't need therapy. You can work it out. Is they'll say things like, no, I think I have a pretty good idea of what's going on in my brain. I'm pretty self-reflective. Like if anything, I'm an overthinker. I really know. And it's like, to me, it's like you're just screaming. You actually would benefit from that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like that's,
no, I totally agree. It's funny. That's one of the earliest things I changed my mind on was that, just, doing a little bit deeper thinking about just the fact that like, we don't kind of give anybody like grief for if like somebody say has a sickness and they're taking medicine for it. We don't like look down on that, but for some reason, like mental health, we just are like, oh, just, get through it, grin and bear it, and it's like, but you don't say that to somebody with like a broken leg. Like somebody with a broken leg, you're like, yeah, like you need to get a splint, you need to probably wear like a cast for a little bit till it heals. You're probably going to have to take some pain medication like during it so you're able to walk or move.
I'm going to understand why you don't come on a hike with me. Like, there's this whole accommodation and understanding and empathy around physical injuries or physical limitations or whatever. But,
and that's bizarre because like there's some really traumatic stuff that happens to people in life, It's like, and even if not, like not everybody's like on the same playing field. I tend to think, this is my own theory. I think most people are actually mentally unwell. Like I actually think the idea of mental fitness is kind of like nonsense. I tend to think that.
I have a book back there on my shelf. By the way, Christopher earlier asked, like, has he read all those books? I read most of these books, Christopher. Nice. Not all. I'm not going to claim all. Most of them. But there's a book back there I think I'd featured on one of my 3 books in reveals in one of my streams. It's The Myth of Normal by Gabor Mate. And he talks about that. He's like, there's an argument to be made that our very culture and society is just kind of it's almost like the groundwater. There is a base level of toxicity to it.
Yeah.
Where and that's the myth of normal. It's like, oh, well, I'm normal, and therefore if I'm having a hard time, there must be something wrong with me. And the myth of normal talks about this idea of like, no, I think like everyone is dealing with a level of unnatural, unhealthy stress and coming out of unnatural, unhealthy family lives and unnatural, unhealthy relationships. Not everybody everywhere, but there's kind of, again, like dirty water. If you look at the water reports for your water bill, it'll say like, this is the acceptable amount of shit in your water. I mean, the same can be said of our culture.
Yeah.
The same can be said of our sense of relationships and sex and family and everything, so it's some people are getting a little too much mercury and shit, in their emotional lives. And I think that's, so it's, I think we're getting better at normalizing it.
Yeah, I do.
But there's still, especially if you talk to somebody over 50, I'd say.
Yeah.
Like you're likely to find yourself in this weird swamp of.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like,
Yeah.
I've had the same feelings and, you just gotta you think about, whatever. And you feel this like defensive kind of tightening.
For sure.
Don't tell me you're not happy.
It is interesting too, because when you've done a lot of self-work, it's kind of like what Scott was describing. It's like, I'm sure that Scott, when you were in the like thick of feeling like bitterness or resentment towards people, you probably weren't even able to see it clearly, that you were in that. So then when you're around other people who are like having bitterness and resentment, you're just like, yeah, we're all the same, But like the second you step out of that system, you can look at it and be like, oh my gosh, like you can see a little more clearly. And then you're like, oh my gosh, like these people are fueled by like bitterness and resentment. And I've been there. And it's like, I've definitely had that experience with therapy myself too, where I've done therapy and then I've looked at people who are like you were describing, Gary. They're just talking, and you're like, oh my gosh, you need a therapist, like you really do. And
I
like,
hate I say this all the time. I try
Yeah.
not to be evangelical about therapy, but I really, and I of course would never be like, you would benefit, like that's kind of a, but because for no other reason than I'm not a therapist, but I do believe very, very, very strongly that almost anyone would benefit. And that's not to say like, because almost anyone is absolutely off, like batshit. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, even if you're feeling pretty good and your life is going great, it's not saying that there's something, and I think that's what we're talking about. It's not saying that something's wrong with you. It's not saying that you're doing anything wrong. But I think it's almost like the book I referred to the other night, like, do you think what you think you think? It, I think, will help.
I love that title.
It's a great
I just
title.
love that title.
It will help you think more clearly and be more conscious of how you think and how you feel and why you feel the way you feel and how past informs present, and how your present is actually aiming you at a future. Like, it just gives you a little, it's almost, I think there's some overlap when you think of the benefits of therapy. There's some overlap with the benefits of meditation. It just makes you a little more conscious, I think. And mindful, I think. So.
And it's interesting too, because like I prior to therapy, I didn't realize like I do specific things that once they pointed out, I was like, oh, I guess I am doing that,
Right.
And it was really enlightening. Like, one thing I do is I mean, you guys can probably see this. I'm an artist, so it's like I wrap up a project and then I'm on to the next project.
Right.
I'm like constantly seeking the next thing. And rarely do I like stop and just kind of enjoy the things that I've already achieved or acquired or whatever. Because it's always like, oh, there's something greater and grander that I can pursue. And along with that, I'll have this feeling like I haven't gained anything. Like, and it's somewhat unhealthy. And so it's like, I remember a therapist kind of pointing that to me. I did a vlog about it where it was just on arrival. The idea of like just kind of accepting that like you've kind of arrived, like, and I think that can be hard for any of us. Like, it's like, I think all three of us are at a point where we have art careers and, like we have opportunities and stuff like that. And this is all stuff we worked hard for. And like, I swear if we were like freshmen out of college or not freshmen out of college, but just graduated out of college or something, and we met people who were making a living doing art, we'd be like, oh my gosh, how do you do that? Like, and we're all there. But it's like so hard when you're used to that hunt and that search for like, the next gig or the next thing. It's like, or just like trying to make great art. Like you're trying to make the next great thing. Like, Gary, you're going to have probably like maybe another week of feeling good about DVSM if you haven't even already passed that, right?
Oh, it's already passed. Passed.
And now it's like, well, I got to make the next good thing. And it is a weird thing of, and therapy did help me with that a lot. Like to kind of, at least if I catch myself doing that, I can be like, oh, I need to actually think about what I have arrived at already, so that I'm not like constantly just, berating myself for not achieving something that's like, again, it's like the perpetual, the stare that just keeps going, right? Like,
well, here's one. And I would suggest that it's something that maybe any kind of creative, it's a question worth asking yourself.
Yeah.
Well, but here's one that I feel like I'm getting ready to broach with my therapist. Why do I need to be interesting? Why do I need to be special? Why do I need to stand out? Like, why is that important? Like, and I think I've been reluctant for a long time. I've always felt when it comes to my creative process and my creative drive, I've always felt it's a little bit, I always have liked the adage about, if you really want to know how a frog works, you have to dissect it, but you're going to kill the frog in the process. you know, and so like I think about that when it comes to like the artistic drive and what's motivating me and why do I need to do it? Why do I need to be special?
Yeah.
And that's what I said. I think every artist, if they're being honest, they, at least internally, they should ask themselves that question. Why?
Yeah, 100%.
And I believe, not just probably because of my day job.
You're like, I think I need to be special because I'm special.
Because I'm special. Well, even if you're special, why do you need to show it? Like, why does it matter? You know, and I believe, just like as with my day job, intent is everything. You know, that you can do something, the same thing can be good or bad depending on why you're doing it. You know, and I'm curious, like, is my heart and head in the right place? I think it's a healthy question to ask yourself if you're going to spend, like all of us here, almost all your free time, like making things. You know, like I think it's a fair question. Like, why? Yeah. Why? If someone came into the room right now while I was drawing D versus M, and they said, like, so why do you do this? I don't know if I could give a real good answer. Yeah, you know, it's just like I don't know.
Other than insanity, you could be like,
yeah, it's a weird thing.
Yeah. So no, I get that a lot. And I had like this almost like mantra like a year ago just on that topic, where I was trying to kind of remind myself to be okay with just being a worker among workers. Because there's nothing wrong with that. Like,
right.
And even in art, it's like, I'm just a worker among workers, and that's okay. That's like, you don't have to be, you know, anything more than that. That's what pretty much everybody is. And I think that can keep your head kind of a little more in check, you know, with the potential things we're all trying to do, you know. Because again, you always run this temptation. Like the problem with artists, you know, and I'm sure Scott can attest to this too, but it's like the problem with artists, we're always going to like fluctuate between being like too pig-headed or too humble, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, where's that fine medium is a hard thing to figure out for artists, I think. Because it's like, and I think we tend to go with more of like the humble route because, you know, we're just, I think most of us are like of that ilk that it's like, oh, you don't have to, like, again, like, why would you have to brag or talk about your stuff? Like, if it's good, it's good, right? The merits of it should speak for itself.
Well, and I think,
but you kind of do have to talk about it, you know? So it's like this weird conundrum that we're all in, you know? Yeah.
I find I'm in a weird spot that I actually have talked in therapy about and talked to people in my personal life about, and it's still something I haven't completely unraveled, is I think when you look at, it's this conflict between action and headspace, where if you look at just what I'm doing, I'm spending all this time making art to put in front of people. Okay. Yeah. And I'm trying to make it as good as it can be, the best I can do. That's, you know, you're trying to do all the things that one tries to do with art. I want it to be done at a high level. I want it to be meaningful. I want it to affect people. I want it to say something. You know, you're doing all this stuff and you're spending all this time, all this energy. But then when it comes to putting it out there, I feel terrified and anxious. And even when I get good feedback, I'm very uncomfortable with it and don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
You know, and like, so it's this weird, obviously there's some kind of conflict between, like, there's a physical part of me, a performative, a kinetic part of me that's like, I want to make art. And there's an emotional part of me that is very uncomfortable with the kinetic parts of me that wants to make art, that is feels very vulnerable and somehow I can say this between friends and any stranger who's watching, apparently, I think sometimes I find positive feedback as difficult as negative.
Oh yeah, sometimes more.
If not more so.
Yeah.
Like it's not painful for me.
Yeah.
It's just I don't know.
You don't know where to
the analogy I've used before. It's like you handed me something in a language I can't read. Like I just don't know what to do with this. I appreciate it because I know what it means.
For those of us reading DVSM, that's like the alien language where like somebody can decode it, but I can't.
Yes.
You know.
And I know from the alien's face, this is very nice and I appreciate it and I'm touched. But like, you know, I can tell like
Yeah.
the alien's making a nice gesture.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the actual things, like, you know, especially like, you know, when it really gets into specifics, like very nice compliments where it's
Yeah.
like, this does mean a lot to me. I'm not lying. But it's a weird, I think it could be my theory is that it's a strange, like deep-seated kind of insecurity where it's like, I just have trouble fully embracing it.
Yeah.
There's something about it that just makes me uncomfortable, and I don't know what it is. I don't know.
No, I actually relate to that a lot. I think that we're more like, I don't know. I think as humans, it's like, I think we tend to absorb bad information more than good. And they've done all these studies on this that I've like read about, where it's like you could give somebody like 20 compliments and one insult, and the one thing that sticks with them is the insult. It's like there's something deep seated in most human beings where it's like the negative just hits harder, and it's like it's part of why like the more negative news like, you know, spreads a lot faster. Negative YouTube stuff is like usually way more viral. You know, like if we had like a big feud between like Scott, me, and you, like we'd probably get 4 times the views. Watching us all just destroy each other.
And then if we individually on our own channels like start trash talking, like, oh, that Josh, let me tell you something about him.
And then like,
you know, people be like,
each other's videos, and we're like pausing, and it's like, when Scott says this, he doesn't talk, and you know, and like you get this engagement, but it's a toxic engagement. But that is like a lot of YouTube is that, because like the toxic stuff just kind of passes really well. So it's one of those
a shame.
Yeah. Oh, Holly said depends on the type of positive. If I hear reminds me of XYZ again, I'll lose it.
That's not a great, and that's a shame. You know, it's funny because I totally identify.
XYZ? Sorry.
I totally identify, Holly, but I try to. I know before I was doing this, I've probably paid compliments like that.
Yeah.
I know in particular, there's an artist I really like, a local artist, Hannah Cisneros.
Oh, yeah, like comparing some. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. So like, and I remember I met her a couple times, and finally, I always admired her work, and finally, I brought myself, like, I managed to say, like, I adore your work. I think it's great. I think more people need to get their eyes on it. It really reminds me of Joe Coleman, and of course, I'm like, and I know where I was coming from, which is, this is a famous artist, who's successful, and I think your work is just as good. You know, like, but I know now, on the other end, it's like your work, which you're probably striving to make original and interesting and personal to you, is a lot like something I saw, you know, and I get it. I get now that that's not a great compliment. But I try, when I hear that sometimes, like, I try to remember, like, they mean well, but I totally understand what you mean. Like, it's not a great compliment. Yeah. A better compliment for anyone watching, if you're going to con and you realize, like, you did like me, you've given like an imperfect compliment, something specific is, in my opinion, the best compliment. I love how you draw this. Or this idea here, or I love this line of dialogue. Like, if you can call out a specific thing, that's, to me, the best.
Yeah.
Like, that's like, okay, not only did you read it, but you liked something enough for it to pick it out.
Yeah.
Like, that's the best.
I will say, on the compliment thing, that's something I've worked really hard on in the last few years, because I can't remember who. Geez, this has been a while, but I think it might have been when I was in the NCS and meeting with other cartoonists, and a couple of cartoonists I really admired were talking about working on this one skill that actually helped them a lot in their career. And one of the biggest skills they all had to learn was to accept compliments and be, you know, and I forget who had put it that way to me, but they had explained it like, you're kind of insulting the person who makes the compliment if you're second guessing it. Cause it's kind of like somebody saying, hey, I really love this band. And you're like, really? They suck, you know? And that's like,
for sure.
Like,
no, it's
really
really
a band, you
really
know?
And, the other thing that's super off-putting is when you, well, it's the same vein. When like someone says like, oh, I love this drawing. It's like, ugh, I never liked how that looked. see this. Like you just kind of show them like why they're wrong.
Yeah.
Like it's like what the F is the matter with you? Stop it. Say
and I
thank
have
you.
to admit, I was that person for a while.
So was I. So was I.
And
I think I thought maybe that made me humble.
Yeah.
You know, like, or it was sort of like, oh, I love your work. It's like,
yeah.
Next one's going to be even better. You know? It's like, okay, what are you doing?
It's like the teenage version of saying sorta cool instead of cool. You know, it's like you can't say it's fully cool because you know you have to qualify it because whatever. Man, you know, it's an interesting skill to like have to figure out how to kind of accept compliments. But what's surprising is when I get compliments now, even if it's comparing me with another artist and they're meaning it in a good way, it's like I just say thanks.
Yes.
And like surprisingly, it kind of puts the person at ease that made the compliment, you know, whereas I think any other route just is almost like a disservice to the person who's trying to, you know, give a compliment. And compliments cost nothing except they kind of cost a lot for the person who gives them. Like if they're sincere about it, if it's a real compliment, like there's an emotional risk to giving somebody a real compliment.
Well,
you know?
They certainly didn't have to.
Yeah.
You know, and like this is a weird analogy. I don't know why it popped into my brain, but it's almost like saying something to someone when something bad happens.
Yeah.
Like just saying anything would be nice.
Yeah.
You know, like I know some people are like, oh, I think it's the same thing. So you have a death in the family or you have something worth complimenting. Like I think some people are like, I don't even know what to say. So I'm not going to say it. It's like something is better than nothing.
Agreed.
But then it doesn't have to even be anything complicated. Like I have 3 reactions to compliments now. They're all completely heartfelt and genuine, but it's either just thanks or thank you, you know, or thank you, that means a lot to me, or thank you, I really appreciate it, you know. And if you say that to someone while looking them in the eye, they feel good. They feel like I gave you a gift and you acknowledged it. You know, and I think that's kind of what a compliment is from some people, especially at a con or something.
Yeah.
A stranger, if they're taking time to say like, this is really cool, like you should be, they're giving you a gift.
And honestly, at a con too, that can be a form of just trying to feel comfortable looking at your booth, because like it is uncomfortable for people to come up to a booth when the artist who made the stuff is at the booth. There's an awkwardness to it. There's like you don't want to feel pressured to buy the thing because like you never know like if you're even going to want to buy it, but you feel kind of guilty even stopping and looking at it. And there's all sorts of like weird stuff that people at a convention are feeling when they approach your table. And so if they go as far as to like try to make conversation or say like, oh, I like the way you drew this, you know, hand or something, like the last thing you want to do is crush that, because now you've like also not only damage that like one interaction, but you've potentially lost a sale at the convention, you know. And it's like, and not that you should just be looking at people as numbers and sales, but at a con you're there to move books, right? And to make fans, and like, you know, neither with a bad reaction would really happen. So
well, to me it's also, there's just a level of politeness where they're sometimes, I know because I've been in this situation, you go up to a table, you look at the stuff, you don't want any of it. Like it's not your thing. It's not even whether it's good or bad. It's just not your thing. You know, and it's not, nothing is exciting you enough to like, I'm going to spend money. But you know, you're a sensitive human being with a brain in your head. You know, you've just walked up to a table where someone's trying to sell something and they're aware of your presence. And like, you don't want to just be kind of like turn on your heels and walk away. Like, so it's just kind of polite to say like, this is all very cool before you walk away. And therefore it's polite for you to let them off the hook and say thank you when they leave. You know, I mean,
like, oh yeah, you think it's good? Why don't you buy it? Why don't you buy it then? Why do you think it's good? You should buy it. You should buy it right now. You should buy it right now. Here's a poster.
Oh God. Yes.
Like I totally agree. Well, guys, I have to head out to play some music. Thanks for hopping on and keeping me company. I hope you guys got some stuff done. I got layouts, like a lot of layout done during this, so very much appreciate the company. Thanks to everybody in the chats who chimed in here. You know what? I'm gonna have to remember this because I feel like that opens up some really interesting topics, just like changing minds.
It does. And I'm sorry that Corey had a few interesting questions about therapy that we never quite got to because we were in it. But maybe in the future.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I'm going to be streaming again, probably like in a couple hours or so. So maybe we'll touch on those then. And Corey, you're always welcome on the stream, buddy.
He's probably having s'mores again, living the high life.
I know. Was there anything cuter in the world than his daughter just like s'mores all over her face, just like like in heaven, just totally happy? Like
no, there was
one of the
not.
cutest things I've seen in like weeks.
Yeah.
All right, Scott, where can everybody find your stuff? And also, you guys get on his Patreon. You're gonna want the behind the scenes stuff of what is coming up. Like, you just want to be paying attention to Scott. Trust us. Like, we got a little behind the scenes peek of what is to come, and it's good.
I just posted a tour of the new studio, so that's on Patreon, and there's going to be tons of stuff. All the layered Photoshop file, all kinds of stuff that to the kind of the projects and things that I'm going to be doing coming up on when I relaunch the YouTube channel. So it's going to be, should be pretty cool. But yeah, that's going to be on my YouTube channel. Just search CircWorks on YouTube. That's where you can find that as soon as I start dropping it sometime next month. Other than that, I've got a website, circworks.com, where I've got tools and for making comics and all kinds of digital tools, and my comic Young and the Dead is there. So
with cover art, with fan art on the covers.
Yeah, I can't reach it. Right?
So like, if you guys think we completely hate fan art, we don't. Both Gary and I have done fan art.
There are exceptions.
Yeah,
there's exceptions.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's exception because the person who actually owns the property commissioned you guys to do it. So
that's true.
That's true. That's true. It's all on the up and up. Yeah,
right. I love it. Make sure you guys pick up Young and the Dead too. It's a really good series, and I enjoy it. And I actually really liked. It was fun to own the alternate covers because it's fun to look at. So I have like both the normal and the alternate covers, which I'd recommend. Gary, where can everybody pick up this beauty that just came out?
Look at that. You can at my Etsy shop. If you go to Etsy and just search for DVSM or Dinosaurs versus Marsbots or Gary Hodges, you should be able to find my shop. Oh, look at there they are. Look at that in the wild.
Yeah.
And I would encourage you to check it out. I have 3 books available for sale. Look at that.
He's got the whole series.
Nice.
Can you like juggle them?
No, or shuffle them like cards. It's a sci-fi horror, very character-focused POV characters. Every issue is a standalone thing. You can read them in any order.
Yes.
Start wherever you like, whether in Men in Black or Top Secret Scientists or innocent bystanders who are just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And if you are interested, I would say get them quick because I'm going to be pausing my Etsy shop Wednesday to go into Phoenix Fan Fusion. I don't want to have to worry about balancing my inventory, and worry like, well, I sold some at the con, so I need to adjust my Etsy numbers, or I sold some on Etsy, so I need to adjust my, I'm going to make my life easier and snooze the shop. So get your orders in now, or come and see me at Phoenix Fan Fusion if you're in Arizona. I'll be there.
Yeah, if you guys are in Arizona, definitely head there. When is Phoenix Fan Fusion?
It's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Nice. This Friday, Saturday.
This coming. Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome. So if you guys are in the Arizona area, that's something to do.
I'll be at a table with the Making Comics guys, Scott Lost and Keith Foster. So you'll be able to see all of us.
Nice.
And, buy all our books.
I want to see you in a wrestling match with Scott Lost.
I think it would be the shortest one. The only time that would actually be when the clock's going would be me fleeing him. And then when he finally got me, then it would be over.
I feel like you need to do something for your YouTube channel with that, where you have like Scott like fake like you're flipping him or something, because I guarantee he could do it. Like make it look like you're just this killer in the ring.
Yeah, I'm just totally. Should I be wearing the old timey wrestling thing with like the suspender kind of thing? And
but then it could end with like the reality of it, where you like accidentally like really hit him or something, and then he's like boom, and like you're running away like
And he does wasn't it a receipt? Isn't that what
Yeah,
that's called?
exactly.
Where, yeah, it's
He's
like, no,
chasing you
no.
for receipts. You're like,
I'm not
"Oh,
messing with Scott.
no,
Yeah,
I wouldn't mess
I'm
with
good.
Scott Lost.
Yeah.
Although Scott is a great guy. Great comics. Making Comics
Yes.
podcast is great. Gary got us into listening to it, and it's really it's well done and really analytical. And those
My
guys,
favorite comic podcast.
Yeah.
My favorite making of comic podcast happens to be Making Comics.
I love it. Well, cool. Thanks, guys. And if you guys haven't yet, hit like because that helps the algorithm. And not just that, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you get notifications. I should be back on probably like in 2 or 3 hours. So thanks to everybody who tuned in, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.